The palace doors opened not for a ceremony or a crisis meeting, but for the unexpected return of Prince Harry. Exiled and estranged, he came back to the UK without warning, and this was no royal visit. His sudden arrival followed a revelation so earth-shattering that even Prince William, once unforgiving, has confirmed his brother's re-entry into royal territory. What truth about Meghan Markle has shattered the royal firewall? Before understanding what this truly means for the royal family, it's worth noting that Heathrow Airport was the first place to feel the weight of the secret, as staff whispered while Prince Harry stepped off a private jet alone. There was no sign of Meghan, no press, no motorcade, just a man walking back into the lion's den surrounded by silence and urgency. His return came without ceremony or headlines, yet its implications thundered louder than any royal proclamation. The car that arrived was not from Buckingham Palace, but from a discreet Kensington fleet, typically reserved for Princess Catherine's solo engagements. Its license plate was shielded, the driver unidentified, and the destination never logged through official channels. Yet the true shock was not the transport, it was the authorization. Within 12 minutes of Prince Harry's landing, an internal clearance code was entered into the Royal Access System, originating directly from Prince William's office, accompanied by the words that sent shockwaves through the palace. Let him in. No more delays. After months, no, years of animosity, the heir to the throne had not only acknowledged his brother's request to return, but personally approved it, bypassing standard diplomatic protocol. Clarence House was informed only after the decision, while the Royal Press Office remained eerily silent, issuing no statements and leaking no itinerary. In that silence, speculation surged. What could compel a fractured family to move with such urgency and secrecy? Why would William, once adamant there was no turning back, be the one to reopen the gates? Those close to the situation insist this was not a change of heart, but a response to something too explosive to ignore, a truth that could no longer remain hidden. And now the public is left breathless, because this story goes beyond family ties, touching on loyalty, buried secrets, and a marriage that may have carried far more deception than love. As speculation erupts across media platforms, one thing becomes clear. The monarchy is preparing for confrontation, not reunion. What could possibly force a fractured family to reopen its gates? And what revelation about Meghan Markle shattered the palace's resolve? The answer lay inside a plain envelope marked privileged and confidential. The dossier sent to Prince Harry would detonate everything he believed about his marriage. This was no gossip, but authenticated, time-stamped material that appeared to have been deliberately hidden from him. It arrived without warning, delivered by courier directly to his legal counsel at the Montecito estate, with strict instructions not to leave it with staff or in a mailbox. Bearing international legal markings from a discreet regulatory body tied to a multinational oversight authority, Harry initially assumed it was another routine inquiry. That illusion vanished within minutes. The first document was a scanned ledger detailing financial transfers from an anonymous source to a personal account once belonging to Meghan, with dates that overlapped precisely with the early stages of their relationship, too exact to dismiss as coincidence. As he read on, the story grew darker. Beneath layers of legal maneuvering and anonymized records were traces of a relationship Meghan had never disclosed, revealed not through sensational claims, but through cold, clinical communications that read more like negotiations than personal correspondence. The documents ended not with explanations, but with expectations, and then silence. No name was ever disclosed, yet references to prior arrangements, strict discretion clauses, and a six-figure settlement made the truth unmistakable. It wasn't the existence of a past that shook Harry, everyone has one, but the realization that it had been deliberately concealed, not from the public, but from him. At the center of the file was a final document, a lone line item on a bank statement labeled Final Silence Installment. The phrase struck him like a loss of breath. It wasn't the money itself, but what it implied that a secret had been actively managed, paid for, and sealed long after he had placed a ring on her finger. The foundation of his world seemed to disappear beneath him. The man who had sacrificed royal privilege, defied centuries of tradition, and stood against an entire institution to defend Meghan, was now facing evidence that she had never fully trusted him with the truth. Her legal team moved swiftly, filing emergency motions in California, requesting evidence suppression, and making quiet calls to palace insiders pleading for delay, but the dossier had already passed through secure channels. As one senior aide later admitted anonymously, it wasn't just explosive, it was nuclear. The walls were closing in, and every attempt to contain the fallout only confirmed its legitimacy. While Meghan braced for exposure, Harry's fury was not yet directed at her. Before confronting her, he had to confront the one man who had known all along and remained silent. King Charles waited in the drawing room of Clarence House, prepared for a conversation that could redefine the monarchy. But Harry sought not counsel, he demanded truth. When he finally asked, "Did you know?" the answer hit with the force of a generational betrayal. The room, once a symbol of royal diplomacy and tradition, became an arena of reckoning. Harry didn't arrive to make peace, he came to demand clarity. What followed was not dialogue, but collision. Without evasion, Charles confirmed what Harry feared. Intelligence had been gathered, discreet inquiries made, and yes, prior to the wedding, he had known. Reports had crossed his desk confidential, formal detailing not criminality, but risk. Financial. Inconsistencies, unexplained transactions, and prior associations shielded by legal protections. Nothing actionable, yet everything unsettling. To Harry, the betrayal wasn't that the palace knew it was that his father, the one person who should have warned him, chose not to. Years of loyalty, sacrifice, and public defiance had been met with deliberate silence. When Harry pressed why the crown allowed him to walk blindly into fire, Charles answered clearly, coldly. The crown protects through silence, not confession. Those words struck deeper than any scandal. Royal discretion had become strategic betrayal, and Harry's voice cracked as he accused his father of valuing optics over honesty, public perfection over private protection. As years of buried frustration erupted in raw confrontation, Charles delivered the sentence that would define the exchange. You asked for truth, not mercy. It was said not with anger, but with finality. The monarch spoke not as a father, but as the steward of a centuries-old institution. In that moment, roles shifted from personal to political, and Harry realized he hadn't just been denied the truth, he had been sacrificed for the illusion of stability. The man who once held him in palace courtyards now stood as the enforcer of royal protocol, willing to let his own son drown to preserve the monarchy. Yet as devastating as Charles's revelation was, it wasn't the final blow. If Charles's betrayal shattered a son, what came next obliterated a brotherhood. The heir to the throne is not meant to lose composure, but when William faced Harry, it was the wounded sibling speaking, not the prince. A closed-door meeting quickly erupted into a verbal war that royal aides could not contain. Word had already reached Kensington. There would be no intermediaries, no senior staff, no soft diplomacy. William demanded to see Harry alone, issuing not a request, but a royal directive from a brother pushed to his limit. Behind those doors, there were no rehearsed lines or formal greetings, just fire. William's first accusation came without hesitation. You didn't just walk away, you detonated everything. Then came the evidence. A printed log of attempted access to a royal financial archive red-flagged weeks earlier, with the IP trace leading to a firm tied to Meghan's US legal team, an unauthorized digital footprint, hidden but not invisible. Harry tried to respond, insisting he had no knowledge and bore no responsibility. But William struck again, harder this time. A voice memo, Catherine's voice, private and personal, recorded in a moment of vulnerability, leaked and circulated through a foreign podcast. The origin traced back to an unnamed associate, once linked to Meghan's inner circle. William had promised Catherine he wouldn't raise it, but now Harry had to hear it. She hadn't just hurt them, she had dismantled trust from within. William snapped. Meghan had violated the one person who had remained silent. And the anger in his voice was not performative, it was protective of a wife who had endured whisper campaigns, tabloid storms, and public humiliation without ever striking back. Yet now, her private grief had been turned into public entertainment, crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Harry denied any knowledge, pleading that he had never intended for events to escalate, insisting that none of it had been by his hand. But William no longer operated on trust. He responded only to evidence and consequence. With one final, thunderous sentence, he ended it. You're a traitor to blood and crown. The words lingered, not for their volume, but because they came from the one person Harry never imagined could say them. In that moment, something deeper than duty fractured between them, a rift no royal protocol, public statement, or photo op could mend. While the palace shook from within, the world turned to the one figure who remained calm and composed. Catherine, precise and deliberate, moved like a queen in waiting, no outbursts, no denials, only a carefully staged public appearance that spoke louder than any statement, backed by a quiet internal strategy that shifted everything. The morning after William's confrontation with Harry, She arrived at a children's hospice, smiling and composed, wrapped in navy, a choice that was more than fashion. It was a coded message of serenity, strength, and continuity, with a single pin on her chest signaling authority and purpose. Pinned to her chest was Elizabeth's brooch, long a symbol of dignity in the face of crisis. The gesture was subtle, yet its meaning unmistakable. Amid a family stormed by betrayal and silence, Catherine remained the unshaken constant. That single appearance became a viral moment. Images of her kneeling beside sick children, listening intently, embracing without hesitation, spreading faster than the swirling headlines about Meghan and Harry. The contrast was striking. While the Sussex narrative descended into leaks, litigation, and accusations, Catherine spoke through silence, and in that silence, she said everything. Behind palace gates, the strategy was even more deliberate. Catherine wasn't merely present, she was steering. In private strategy rooms at Kensington Palace, she assumed control from advisors urging reactive messaging, instituting one rule: let presence be power, and consistency speak louder than conflict. Every engagement was recalculated, every media release scrutinized for tone. The palace wasn't defending itself, it was redefining the battlefield. Just as Catherine's approach began solidifying public confidence, a leak arrived. A confidential pitch memo from a California production house tied to Meghan's former PR advisor portrayed Catherine as the passive force who destroyed her. Intended to frame her as cruel and calculated, it spectacularly backfired. Instead of vilifying her, the memo sparked a wave of solidarity. Across the UK and beyond, women from NHS nurses to school teachers shared stories of quiet strength under the banner Windsor Women. Catherine was no longer just seen. She was recognized not as a silent accessory to power, but as the embodiment of resilience itself. Inside the monarchy, aides began calling Catherine the Shield. While the institution reeled from internal fractures, she held the line with grace, calculation, and purpose, redirecting the storm, not through confrontation but through unwavering composure. That, more than any scandal or soundbite, made her the most formidable figure in the palace conflict. Not because she attacked, but because she refused to be shaken. Across the ocean, however, Meghan's silence was not strategic. She was cornered, her influence waning. In Hollywood, silence can be louder than scandal. As she withdrew from appearances and PR teams panicked, insiders revealed the truth. Her brand was crumbling from within. Damage control spiraled into quiet disaster. Executive meetings behind closed doors reconsidered brand partnerships, and scheduled events were quietly cancelled. Netflix halted development on the Sussexes' upcoming docuseries, officially citing creative misalignment, but privately fearing that the storyline had become too volatile. Sponsorships and seven-figure endorsements began disappearing, with brands citing ethical reviews and shifting cultural values, but sources confirmed it was liability, not principle. Meghan, once celebrated for empowerment and reinvention, had become a reputational risk no PR team could contain. The tipping point came at a high-profile United Nations gala in New York, when Kevin Costner, known for his careful diplomacy, publicly rebuked her, saying she showed up like she still had a crown. The room froze. The words rippled across headlines, late-night segments, and insider blogs. The illusion had shattered. Behind the scenes, former staffers quietly began breaking their silence. Sealed NDAs had long protected Meghan's past from scrutiny, but now the pressure was mounting. Anonymous aides hinted at entire chapters of her life. Relationships, financial transactions, private deals carefully erased from the public narrative until the palace had buried it all. And now, it was resurfacing. Desperate to reclaim control, Meghan began drafting a solo memoir, one last opportunity to seize the narrative unfiltered, uncensored, and entirely on her terms. Yet the industry was unconvinced. Insiders warned publishers, this isn't a revelation, it's a reaction. And even sympathetic voices quietly stepped back. Hollywood, once eager to embrace her as a disruptor, had decided she was no longer a revolution, but a cautionary tale. Executives, agents, and producers now referred to her behind closed doors with a single, unspoken phrase: she's too hot to touch. In the silence Meghan once wielded as strategy, isolation now took hold, and her voice, once amplified globally, grew eerily still. But while she retreated, another voice prepared to erupt, one that could shake the monarchy to its core. For years, she had been just a whisper in anonymous forums. Now DL had a face, a voice, and a stack of documents capable of rewriting royal succession itself. Her televised interview, set to air soon, carried nuclear implications. DL, once hidden behind contracts, legal initials, and layers of confidentiality, revealed that she had been the undisclosed surrogate for both Archie and Lilibet. The palace's fear was not just her words, but the evidence she possessed. Legal contracts signed overseas, notarized fertility clinic records, financial transactions mapped to offshore trusts, and NDAs signed by members of Meghan's inner legal circle. For years, the monarchy had quietly supported the Sussex children's titles and standing. But none of it accounted for a hidden surrogacy arrangement allegedly concealed, even from the Crown's legal counsel. Within hours of DL's interview being confirmed by major media outlets in the UK and US, Buckingham Palace went into lockdown, ordering an emergency audit of succession documents and summoning legal historians and senior officials to assess the unprecedented situation. Constitutional experts were summoned, and every record related to Archie and Lilibet's birthright was pulled from the vaults. What had once been a ceremonial bloodline had become a legal minefield. The implications were seismic. British law may be silent on royal surrogacy, but tradition is not, and in the monarchy, tradition carries the weight of statute. Experts warned of a crisis no modern sovereign had faced: constitutional ambiguity. If even part of DL's documents proved true, the children's rights to titles, inheritance, and the line of succession could be legally challenged not by tabloids, but by Parliament. The tremors spread beyond London. Commonwealth nations, already wary of royal entanglements, demanded answers. Australia's press called it a monarchy on the brink, and Canadian leaders pressed for transparency. Within the UK, public sentiment shifted dramatically. Polls showed that, for the first time in decades, a majority questioned whether the monarchy could survive another institutional storm. This was not scandal, but a crisis of identity. DL had not merely opened a controversy, she had detonated a question the palace was unprepared to answer. What defines a royal heir? Biology, secrecy, or something even darker? And at the center of this constitutional hurricane stood a man abandoned, exhausted, and facing a reckoning unlike any in living memory. Emotionally shattered, Prince Harry returned with a demand for truth. But now he stood alone, cast out by father, brother, and nation. The man once seen as a rebel royal teetered on the edge of personal erasure. In the aftermath of DL's revelation, there were no press briefings, no royal statements, and no visible trace of Harry, just silence. He vanished from public view, retreating to a remote Norfolk estate that had once been offered as a sanctuary, now serving more like emotional exile. Sources close to the palace confirmed there were no scheduled appearances, no press correspondence, and no contact even with close allies. For the first time since leaving the institution, Harry had become unreachable, even to those who once defended him. Senior aides whispered of erratic behavior, volatile moods, and increasingly reactive decisions. Frantic calls to legal teams, late-night meetings abruptly cancelled, and bursts of frustration over news leaks beyond his control. The man who once commanded global stages with passionate speeches now struggled to maintain a coherent strategy. Then came the leak that confirmed insiders' worst fears. A thread of private text messages between Harry and a senior royal advisor had reached the press. The content was raw. Harry had begged his father to intervene, to stop DL's interview. From airing, to deploy legal authority, institutional influence, anything to protect not just his family, but his children's legacy. Charles's reply was chilling in its finality. We do not rewrite truth with fear. The message was more than a refusal, it was the collapse of the last lifeline Harry had left within the institution. The palace response was swift and merciless. Harry's collapse was not only as a prince, but as a son. He realized that no father, no brother, no institution would shield him anymore. The weight of what he had uncovered, and the storm he had unleashed now rested entirely on his shoulders. Back in California, Meghan's household was crumbling with equal brutality. Key staff were dismissed, crisis PR teams cycled in and out, and legal advisors struggled under cascading demands. Litigation, reputation management, and inheritance reviews. The palace quietly audited the financial clauses tied to Archie and Lilibet's trusts, now under scrutiny. If DL's claims held, those benefits could be rescinded. Harry, once celebrated as the royal who broke away to protect his family, now stood amid the ruins of what he had tried to preserve. He had lost not just control of the narrative, but his seat at the table, bringing truth to the gates of the monarchy, only to find rejection. While the world debated legacy, succession, and scandal, Harry receded into silence. Meanwhile, the Crown prepared its most ruthless response. The monarchy does not weep, it recalibrates. Titles were revoked, diplomatic barriers raised, and royal doctrine rewritten not in grief, but in granite. Within hours of DL's claims dominating headlines and Harry retreating into isolation, the palace moved with chilling precision. There would be no more quiet tolerance. Prince William, long the silent sentinel of continuity, emerged not as a grieving brother, but as a leader reclaiming control. Plans were drawn for a national address not of apology or healing, but of correction and reinforcement. He told aides, "The Crown will not explain itself. It will re-establish itself." The first strike reverberated internationally. Harry and Meghan's titles were formally suspended, not symbolically, not ceremonially, but operationally. Their names were scrubbed from royal records, signaling the institution's decisive reassertion of authority. Harry and Meghan's patronages were stripped, their branding erased from official Commonwealth directories, and their HR distinction placed under permanent freeze. The monarchy didn't merely revoke titles, it removed the platform they had weaponized. Protocol officers worldwide were briefed. From Ottawa to Sydney, Wellington to Nairobi, ambassadors received a singular directive: freeze all recognition of the Sussexes' former titles in public diplomacy. Commonwealth media outlets were subtly reminded of proper royal hierarchy. An invisible wall rose around Harry and Meghan, constructed not of emotion, but of institutional force. Simultaneously, Parliament launched a quiet review. Though surrogacy remains a legal grey area in royal succession, lawmakers and constitutional scholars were summoned to evaluate inheritance pathways tied to Archie and Lilibet. Could titles granted without verified lineage stand? Could succession remain intact on a foundation of omission? These questions were no longer hypothetical. They were existential, and the palace demanded answers before the public could ask. At the heart of the storm stood two women who refused to blink: Princess Anne, the monarchy's iron will, and Princess Catherine, its strategic core. Together, they formed the Windsor Continuity Committee, a command unit, not a ceremonial group with one mission: ensure the Crown endured at any cost, and orchestrated internal discipline, securing staff loyalty and silencing leaks, while Catherine redefined public optics, replacing scandal with stability and chaos with control. The message was unmistakable. This was no longer about one marriage or one interview. It was about the soul of the monarchy itself. In the face of betrayal, it did not crumble, it clarified. No emotion, no indulgence, only decisive response. As bloodlines are questioned, relationships destroyed, and truths weaponized, one certainty remains. This is no longer a family saga, it is the monarchy's fight for survival, and the Crown will do whatever it takes.